This is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. I'm going to say it again. We'll do it for 1 week and then we'll stop. If you're about to click off this video less than 12 seconds in, please tell me in the comments why. I'm going to leave it at that. Like, I've certainly gotten a lot of those. That the average watch time still does seem to be about 12 seconds, and it just does not make sense. Maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe it's 12 minutes. 12 minutes would make a lot more sense. 12 minutes would be great. Actually, way better than 12 seconds, but I think seems to be about 12 seconds. Anyways, today is Friday, July 23rd, so for the most part, we want to try and rush. For the accountability section too, we can rush through that fairly easily because I didn't play any of Dead Space 3. Instead, I've been working on trying to fix the print head, I believe is what's broken, but I'm not even sure at this point, of my printer, which failed miserably, so I just need to buy a new printer. I will say almost certainly I know some of the print head got clogged because I bought unofficial ink, and it sounds so shilly and it sounds ridiculous to have to make this claim, but it really seems to be that you need to buy official ink for a printer if you don't print a lot. Otherwise the print head will get clogged. Even if you do print a lot, your print head might get clogged. I don't know. So I'm trying to save $30-40 because ink is overly priced, and no doubt about that. Ended up costing me probably $100 to $200 more. We could chalk it up to about $100 to $200 because now I'm gonna potentially have to buy a new printer. I'm thinking I'm gonna just go cheap with, or somewhat cheap with, a black only laser printer. You barely even need a printer these days. Me personally, it's just occasionally you have something you want a copy of, or you want to print out legal things, or you're filling out taxes once a year, and using a laser printer with toner gets rid of the ink clogging issue. The ink lasts longer in as far as the number of pages, or it should. I think it does. I really didn't check that, but it would definitely last longer for me as long. But yeah, you are almost to the point where we're a completely paperless society for a lot of people. A lot of people definitely are not at that, and certainly the thing you lose by going with a laser printer is it's probably not going to be able to print at high resolution photo images. I don't think too many people do that anymore, but there definitely are some people that do that. And you're not going to be printing on like glossy paper, and you're not going to be printing anything in color, which getting a color laser printer would be nice, but it's just not really worth the difference in price. And then there's definitely a question about which brands, since they're all kind of bad brands as far as printers. Apparently there's this whole new movement. Oops, I thought that was a Runecraft character. Well, we're playing Dragoncraft at this point for this arena run. Yeah, this Mopria seems to be some new software, just the conglomerate for printing, which is fine, but doesn't seem like it integrates as well with scanning if you really need to scan. Like, the truth is, if you were gonna scan something, well, a flatbed scanner will keep things still. Certainly it's probably lower resolution than what you could do just taking a picture with your cell phone can do. Because yeah, you probably, if you have a flatbed scanner, have something that's a 5, maybe 10 megapixel camera on that, whereas your cell phone probably higher than 10, 12 to 25 or higher megapixel possibilities. Yep. So it's annoying. Like, I had hoped that the last printer I bought, which was probably 5 years ago, was going to be the last printer, and I had gone pretty fancy with an all-in-one. The one I'm looking at now works. It says wireless. It's advertised as a wireless, but it doesn't bother to really say or talk about the wired connection, so I had to go into more details and go directly to the website of the manufacturer just to make sure that there is a network plug on the back of it. Otherwise, my PC and servers and things, if they ever wanted to print anything, would actually be able to connect. Because there is that thought I could certainly see where they would just get cheap and not put a Cat5 connector, Ethernet connector in the background, in the back of a printer, and instead just assume everybody that's going to use it is going to be on a Wi-Fi connection. Alright, so we want to do this. And then we want to do this, I think. And then this. No, I'm actually wasting my time doing this. I shouldn't have done either one of those. Hit this.
I'll see you in purgatory.
This is pure craftsmanship.
Do that. But yeah, so I'm now having to focus on buying a printer. Working on the irrigation system, it was a nightmare. It did not work. There's just a ridiculously small amount of play. With the spigot is just installed wrong. It's tilted to the left in one direction. It's tilted towards the wall in another direction. The angles are totally wrong. And when you're trying to connect a basically homemade manifold system together, there's just not enough play. So eventually, on one of the plastic 1-to-4 hose splitter things, I was trying to see if I could get some play on it and twist it, and the thing just snapped because it was plastic. And so now I've got another one, a different model coming. And I also found that the actual irrigation valves are so wide in their anti-siphon casing that there's just a wide part of the actual valve that I couldn't, in the box I had, get 4 to be side by side. There's just not enough room. They were just bumping up to each other, and since everything is tilted towards the back, there's not enough room to perhaps have half the valves facing the back and half the valves facing the front. So as an experiment, I ordered a different valve from a different manufacturer that hopefully is smaller, and the ideally what I could do is take 1, maybe 2 of the old valves out and replace them with the new valves, and then use the 2 old valves in the next one, which it definitely needs a major rethink. I think as I was struggling to get the angles right to get the screws to thread so it would actually screw in, whereas because there was just a lot of times where it would feel like it was screwing in and threading the needle, as it were, on the screws and the couplers and everything. It just wasn't. It was either skipping threads or really just wasn't even screwing in at all. There was just not enough room. What I think in the rethink is I'm gonna see if I could get the valves to rotate 90 degrees instead of pointing downward. Downward, it was probably a bad choice in the first place. But I'm thinking we'll go sideways, see if we can rotate everything 90 degrees, see if I can purchase a pre-built orbit manifold, irrigation manifold. That way, if you get the pre-built one, it looks like you get kind of all of their connectors, couplers, and their piping, which they've made to work with their plastic threads, instead of having to have their threads go to like a brass coupler or to then another device. Like, I'm using like 5 different couplers from 5 different manufacturers, and that just left a lot of room for tolerances to be off, and no amount of even accurate measurements would have probably helped me, because the way things are built versus the way things are actually supposed to be built are usually not that accurate, particularly if you're not paying top price for plumbing things.
Who are you calling a lizard?
So yeah, I'm thinking rotating it and having 4 hoses and 4 valves come out one side of the box, having the actual spigot handle be far to one side of the box instead of directly in the center. Another option I've seen that might have worked better is having a 1 to 4 water splitter that split it at a 45-degree angle, so 2 hoses would have come out on the diagonal on the left and 2 hoses would have come out on the diagonal on the right. That's another thought, certainly.
Ooh-wee, this wasteland's a fixer-upper.
Let's see, do we want to do anything?
There's a lot more where that came from.
Oh, this thing's more vicious than a 9-headed dragon. This is pure
Probably played that
craftsmanship.
wrong.
Well, this ain't ideal, is it?
Alright, that actually keeps that alive, doesn't it? Wow, there's a whole strategy in this deck. I didn't even know about it. So yeah, I immediately had to order the replacement parts, order some different parts. I ordered a kit that hopefully will put a ball swivel at the very top. The anti-vacuum siphon at the very top of the manifold setup, I don't think I really need it, and it certainly was working awkwardly sometimes, where it was creating a siphon in an opposite direction and shooting water just increasingly out of its holes in the bottom. That's what it's supposed to do, is that if there's any backflow, it's supposed to shoot the water out the holes in the bottom, which in this case would be inside the supposedly waterproof box, which has now gotten all the water, and the wires got wet, and I'm a little concerned about that because I wasn't setting up the wires in the gel encased wiring caps that they would have recommended. So yeah,
Ready to
that
witness my true strength?
And that's another concern, certainly, is that maybe the wiring would all get rusted and I'd have to clip it and then rerun the edges and recap it, so that might be an improvement. The wires were not as long as I had hoped on the valve, so I was not able to quite put them in the place I would have liked to place them. The insulation, the main part of the box being an insulation weatherproof box, is fairly thin, but I feel like the air gap and the insulation will probably be more than enough for my region to keep water from freezing, at least specifically in those areas. Although technically you're supposed to drain irrigation systems as much as you're supposed to drain hoses before winter. But yeah, I don't think that they're going to be real issues. There is a possibility. I already took the insulation out of the back of the box to get more room, since everything is tilted towards the back, but there is a possibility that I will just not be able to get enough angle, and I may have to cut the entirety of the box back out, which that would be a mess, certainly, to say, hey, let's just get rid of the entire back panel, which I'd have to manually cut. I have enough weatherproofing tape, aluminum tape, which that stuff is sharp, man. Did not realize how sharp that aluminum tape can be, so you got to be careful with it when you're cutting and tearing it and poking holes on it, as I was. But it seems like it sticks fairly well, so I'll award it there. That so yeah, I could use the aluminum tape certainly to just tape it to the brick wall. If I had to cut the whole back out, I was going to do something like that, or at least it was a possibility I was going to do something like that anyways, on a smaller scale. But yeah, theoretically I am still trying to make this be a waterproof, watertight thing, which also argues against actually using the vacuum siphon coupler I had, like, because you really don't need it. The irrigation valves I have already have anti-siphon valves in them, so you kind of don't need another one. But yeah, the fact that on a rare occasion might squirt water into the box, and the box then would be sealed and waterproof, is not a great thought. And certainly it got very wet very quickly. Like I got sprayed non-stop. I probably spent 2.5 hours working on this thing, and just like every time there was a leak, it was just spraying water over everything and all over me. So I wasn't very happy about that, and it certainly was a hassle just trying to have the right pliers. I don't really have the right pliers, but so I'm trying to use one pair of pliers this is too small and one pair of pliers that's too big. Yeah, so it was quite the eventful day. I have ink all over my hands from trying to clean out the print head. I would recommend, if your print head is damaged, don't bother to get a print head cleaner kit. It seemed like it probably worked, but it also seemed like in the process of trying to clean out all of that, you're gonna have to wash everything with water so much that you're probably gonna short circuit the circuitry in there. Maybe maybe if I'd gone crazier with it and taken the whole print head unit assembly apart and just had the plastic parts, maybe at that point I could have actually not run into an issue, but that's not what happened, certainly. So I don't know if it was the print head circuitry got wet and short-circuited. I don't know if it was that the actual chips in the inkjet cartridges, the unofficial inkjet cartridges, were short-circuited because of some other reason. I don't know if it has nothing to do with the print head whatsoever and literally was just the printer itself breaking. Yeah. So I guess that means I really don't have anything else to talk about. So we should just start to go through the video game news and try and wrap up today. We might even want to I make these stupid suggestions and never make it to that point, but we might even want to try and do some watch list fall list cleanup today and leave the games that have come out on Steam for Monday. I do see a thought pattern there that would make sense. I got a decent number of views on the last stream, I will say also. 11. That's decent for me. So streaming at around 10 in the morning seems to be the right thing to do. Okay, so we'll start by ending this turn and we'll come over here. WB Games is hiring for a lot of people. There's these designer for a game called Return Ship. I assume that's the name of the game and that this isn't a internship where you might return. It might be an internship where you return. Let's open one of these in a new tab just to see if that gets explained more. If that's the case, then every single one of these jobs are basically saying, yeah, they're temporary jobs. They are internships that you might return to, which really means you're just an at-will employee, and in particularly in some places where contract employment is a little bit more common. 15-week paid returnship. You know, by not literally labeling it as an internship too, they can get away from the fact that internships are supposed to be 100% for the benefit of the student and not the company, and thus they will expect you to actually produce and work on things. And what's ridiculous is this is not really an internship by any means. It's people who have at least 5 years of professional experience. I don't know why you'd want to work for WB Games at the moment with the whole mergers, acquisitions, and everything going around WB. I don't know why you would want to work for them with such terrible job offerings. Anyways, and then if you think about what WB Games actually are being made at the moment, you working directly for WB Games are almost certainly working on that Batman game without Batman. That would be my only guess as to anything that they're even working on at the moment. Applying to WB Games does not mean you're applying to something like one of their subsidiaries like TT Games, where you'd be working on Lego games. Blizzard's president, according to Gamma Sutri, internally comments on extremely troubling harassment lawsuit. So what's this all about? A huge harassment and discrimination lawsuit has been levied against Activision Blizzard by the state of California. It sounds like, from what I hear, some major accusations that sound accurate. It doesn't seem like anybody so far has come out to say that this is even slightly off base. So, I mean, you don't want to just immediately paint someone as being guilty, but it seems like there is an institutionalized case of harassment that happens at Activision Blizzard, and certainly that would explain why Activision Blizzard as a company has gotten worse and worse. It would explain why their production and their games have gotten worse and worse. It would explain why you've seen significant numbers of people leave Activision Blizzard. Now, there is a weirdness, certainly, that I'd hate to think it was Ben Brode that was one of the problem employees. If anything, it feels like it is straight up a management problem as much, so maybe more Activision than Blizzard problem, but it seems like straight up up and down the management chain there's real provable in court incidences of like women being underpaid and being given unfair workloads, and men being allowed to be paid more for doing less work or for doing no work, or by handing off their work to females. Just some real classic misogynist type business happening.
The uncharted desert awaits.
On that, there's some real big incidences of bad behavior, but at the core of it, I think what I'm taking from the reporting is that the blackballing of journalists also occurred. That's kind of a small thing, and journalists don't deserve to be a protected class at all. But the bigger, more institutional issues seem to be like unrefutable. Like when you have evidence of somebody is being discriminated against, they're not getting promotions when they deserve it, they're getting paid less, they're getting treated differently. Those are just like the basic things that I think everyone can agree on, besides really jerks in society. If you get boggled down into like one story versus another story, then you get down to a case, well, maybe this is one bad apple or a few bad apples, and I don't think this is the case. From every angle you look at Activision Blizzard, they don't seem like they're a good company. Which, yeah, that makes it pretty impossible to want to go and play Activision Blizzard games at this point, which we already had that problem, really, where I didn't really want to play Activision Blizzard games for several controversies even before this. It certainly can get graphic, and in all fairness to the other side, maybe all these accusations that are being written in an incredibly discriminatory, biased way, maybe all of these accusations are wrong. I seriously doubt it. I mean, you're really getting to where there's smoke, there has to be fire arguments at this point. I think we'll start to see former Activision Blizzard employees coming out and confirming some of this, particularly if they weren't part of the quote frat boy culture as it's being described here, which I think is inappropriate to just say frat boy culture until you start to really explain that frat boy culture as it's being described is just incredibly toxic cultures, and it isn't just boys or males. But see, even the way this Video Games Chronicle article is written is a frat boy culture where male employees behaved inappropriately. That is not really what I'm taking from it. It's not male employees. Don't let the corporations are people too BS. We'll mention that. Don't let Activision as an entity blame its employees. This was a institutionalized structural culture that was created, probably created by high up management. So this is the kind of thing where this is the kind of case where the idea of incarcerating or executing a corporation, if it's supposed to be an entity, starts to make more sense, and it certainly highlights the fact that corporations are not people, because these actions, if true, should lead to the entity of Activision Blizzard being thrown in jail or straight up broken up / executed, but that's highly unlikely to happen. Let's see. Moving on, I don't want to talk too much about this because we really do want to see where this case goes. There's a high chance it will just settle, but we would like to see it. Like to see it actually go to the courts. This is the thing that I always say I want to see is I want to see people filing complaints, and I want to see them having civil or criminal charges happen. I want to see things legislated in the courts and not in the court of public opinion. So it is somewhat going to spoil that thought if I then hugely speculate more than just like an initial impressions. I think initial impressions are about as appropriate as a news reporter, and then we can just be silent until the next actual bit of news to report on comes out, which may be for a while. Apparently it's been a 2-year investigation, so it's been a long time coming, this court case. I think 2 years, what I heard. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. The Epic Games Store has launched its summer sale. Discounts of 75% on select items. I don't think I'd ever buy anything on the Epic Games Store though. I suppose this might be the first summer sale to ever happen for the Epic Store. I'm not sure if they did something previously like that. Can you play this?
Uncharted desert awaits.
And then I can play this, but it won't matter. Yeah, the Epic Games Store having a summer sale a couple weeks after the Steam summer sale probably isn't going to help it much either, particularly since the Steam Deck was just announced. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steam Deck's release announcement was prematurely made to nicely wedge between the announcement of the OLED version the Nintendo Switch and the
Careful.
and the potential Epic Store Steam sale. If they did know both of those things were going to happen, or knew that the Epic Store sale was going to happen fairly soon, and announced the Steam Deck, that would be interesting. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it is something even more simplistic than that, that this summer Steam summer sale didn't make as much money as they were expecting. And I don't know why this would be really an issue, since Valve is not a public company. Last I checked, last I heard. I'm fairly certain it's a private company. So they don't really have to report to shareholders. So unless there was just some internal accounting that shocked them, I don't see a real reason why they would want to get that $5 of that extra $5 for reserving a Steam Deck out of a bunch of people. If anything, I imagine the reason why you would want to get the extra $5 is because you're trying to order parts, and the act of ordering parts created a need for some cash raising. Unless Gabe Newell or somebody at Valve is investing heavily in something like crypto or other stocks of other companies, and they needed to make up some losses. It'd be crazy if it turned out that Valve was part of the people who were shorting GameStop and then they got screwed because of the whole Reddit GameStop super stonks thing, and they're trying to make up the money that way. Yeah, a lot of possibilities. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle, Marvel Avengers is getting a free weekend trial on most platforms this month, which is probably too little too late. Even in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, ignoring Miss Marvel here as your younger character and intro character to this game, like, Captain America's not Captain America. Thor's not really going to be in the movies too much longer. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't ever see the Hulk anymore. I think this guy is retired / dead. And the most recent Black Widow movie had to be a prequel because the Black Widow character died. And that Black Widow movie didn't succeed very well. Anyways, so all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at this point, that first generation of characters, are pretty much in limbo and forgotten about in favor of trying to have more of the next generation of characters. Almost certainly Black Panther would have been one of the next generation of characters, but he can't because he died. The Black Widow movie that just happened tried to introduce a sister character to Black Widow to replace her to be the new Black Widow. That very well might happen. The Doctor Strange series is the next big movie to happen. WandaVision, I don't think, set itself up to bring Wanda back into the cinematic universe. Maybe it did, and I'm just misreading it. I would imagine that the WandaVision series is just going to keep her in the TV universe. The Loki TV, Disney Plus TV series, I think keeps Loki and the Loki actor out of the cinematic universe. I don't think that Loki in the cinematic universe is going to work. There is, I suppose, questions as to whether there even will be a Marvel Cinematic Universe, or if it's just going to turn straight into a multiverse that then creates a different problem of not being not really being a thing that makes anything matter at that point. If there's a multiverse with all different possibilities, it is possible that nothing will ever really matter. And I would say they also have dropped the ball as far as trying to find a way to integrate the cartoons into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Are there any Marvel cartoons though, or am I just thinking about a whole bunch of DC cartoons? Yeah, I think I might be literally thinking about a whole bunch of DC cartoons. What is striking me as crazy, speaking of DC, there is something that has just become really crazy in the fact that there is basically things that have been talked about, like the live action Teen Titans show, that either came out on some kind of streaming service that nobody saw it, and now they are coming to the CW, or it's just been in production and the pandemic slowed everything down. But it feels like the live action Teen Titans series, which I'm not even going to bother to mention quality on it, it seems like it is just now coming to the CW. They ended the Flash series, which, boy, if you want to see a transition, just look at the characters that are at the end of the Flash series versus the characters in like the first season of the Flash. It is shockingly different. Okay.
All to find a brighter future for everyone.
Try calculations.
Hit that.
Ready to summon.
Let's go and hit that.
This is how you
That
count.
one.
The ordained hour has arrived.
I'll keep going, no matter what.
And hit that one.
Heavy.
Don't give up.
Such a good guinea pig.
There we go. Yeah. They're also apparently just remaking another Suicide Squad movie, which is crazy.
Those centuries
So
pass.
theoretically,
All of them all.
particularly the actress who played Harley Quinn in the first Suicide Squad movie has played that character, then continued that character in the Birds of Prey movie, and now is rebooting playing Harley Quinn for a third time in a reboot of Suicide Squad.
Forever and ever more.
I mean, it just seems insane. And I think I've heard her, it was said that she's done playing Harley Quinn at this point, which, in all fairness, yeah, 3 movies is a lot to play the same characters and potentially pigeonhole yourself as a character in a movie series, particularly a movie series that seems to be going absolutely nowhere. But yeah, to get back to the Marvel thought, yeah, there needs to be some Marvel cartoons. It would make a lot of sense for there to be some. I don't even know who you would get. Well, you would expect that there would have been a Miles Morales Spider-Man cartoon, or some kind of Spider-Man cartoon. and it's just not there. Like, you would expect that they should try to do something with whatever they have the rights to, well, even if it is just going to be like teen versions of Thor and Captain America and things like that. Or you bring in just new characters. I know there was that whole fight with getting the rights to Fantastic Four and X-Men. I think they have all of that now, but even if they didn't, there's something that they should be working on. I think you also run into that same problem with
Colts has come in every shade imaginable.
you run into this problem with like 217 damage to an enemy follower. Is that gonna save me? Probably not.
Blessed is the promised day.
My crystal sword.
I am beyond prophecy.
That's hot. Vice, virtue, avarice.
This is my fate after all.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. That's also a problem with like the Star Wars universe too, is that Disney seems incapable of trying to establish that next generation of fans. You maybe on this episode 7 started to get some people, some new generations of kids interested in it, but then you kind of lost them by episode 8 and episode 9, and so you didn't establish them. You may very well have lost that fandom forever. I wouldn't be surprised if you had. Whereas there's like no Clone Wars cartoon or anything happening right now, I think, unless Rebels is still going on. And in a weird way, the Disney Plus streaming service lately, from what the parts I've heard about as someone who doesn't have it and wouldn't watch it even if they did have it, it doesn't feel like it's getting new content for a younger audience. It feels like it's getting content for established adults who are fans of Disney, and that seems very weird. Like to the point where I don't even know how many kids would even be interested if you said, I'm taking you to the Disneyland, which honestly, Disneyland, Disney World, not places really worth the effort when you really think about it. It's way worse of an experience than you think, unless you can get a hotel very close to it, like the very expensive premium hotels run by Disney, and stay there for 3 days and get like fast pass and special treatment. Otherwise you're just going to end up standing in lines a ton.
I'll eat their troops for breakfast.
But yeah, I'm going off topic certainly at that point. 5. So this would not destroy anything. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Grid Legends is coming in 2022 and it includes a new story mode. Apparently this is a new grid racing game. These are like real people, so they have very little actual footage of the racing game element. And I guess the question is, do you care about the racers, or do you care about the racing and the cars? I am not sure which way that goes for a lot of people, because I just really don't know that audience. Like, I really don't know if racing car games are for people who are fans of racing or fans of racers. I don't know if racing car shows and events are even for fans of racers or racing. I would argue it's probably a case where racing events are for fans of crashes more than anything. If I was just going to generalize, I bet a significant number of people that show up at a NASCAR event really are just going there to get drunk. I assume they serve alcohol and hope for crashes, and that's about it.
The path ends here.
At least I know, like, football fans are fans mostly of the football a little bit more than the players. Like, where arguably I think maybe basketball fans are perhaps slightly more fans of the players than the basketball, because there's a lot less enforcement of the rules in basketball than there is in football, and a lot less technicality in the plays, I would say, in basketball than in football.
The world called, and I answered.
You must die.
Where I would say NASCAR and racing is probably just at max technicality as far as the maneuvers being played, when maneuvers happen. Moving on, a EA Play event happened, and frankly they had about 3 things to talk about, and they stretched it out for what felt like 40 minutes. I was watching it on double speed, and it still felt like it was taking forever. One of the things they announced is Call of Duty Battlefield 2042, but also they announced Battlefield Portal, which is some sort of editor, but not really an editor, where Battlefield 2042's Portal mode is going to be in 2042. It lets you bring in characters, art assets from basically all their previous games. So it can be World War I, World War II, future times, modern times, fighting each other. Which I assume what this really is more just a case that every single game they have, or game asset that they're going to include in something like that, is all running on like the Frostbite engine, and so it wasn't fairly hard to move things from one game to the other, since it's all been running on the Frostbite engine for a while now. I do have a bit of a search there, because my question is the original Dead Space on the Frostbite engine. And actually, I'll just type that in and figure that out right now. Because like Dead Space 1, 2, and 3 all run terribly on PC, and so I assume that they are all on the same Frostbite engine too. So yeah, we have here, what engine? So it's made by EA Redwood Shores, which eventually became known, I think, as Visceral Games before it was shut down. Now the 3rd game in the series. What's this? Development. Let's see. The team reused the game engine they had designed for The Godfather, which had chosen because it tailored to the development side, supported necessary environments, and implemented the Havoc physics engine. So, seemingly, no, that's the vertical slice, though. That doesn't mean inherently that the final game was actually using that custom engine.
I present you a gift from my lord.
Yeah, seems like they're being fairly tight-lipped. You know what I could do is I could just see if I could find on page. Let's see. Where's find?
Oh, why'd it have to be a clear day?
Print find. Engine.
All the magic I need. Here goes.
The problem here is Isaac in Dead Space is an engineer, so every time engineer is mentioned. Okay. I think I've got this. Let's go and kill this.
I suppose I've lost some of my edge.
So yeah, EA announced Dead Space in July of 2021, being developed by EA's Motive Studio, a completely different studio and completely different people. It is going to use the Frostbite engine. So the list of games that support the Frostbite engine here, we have Battlefield 1, 3, 4, and 5, 2042, 1943. I wonder why Battlefield 2 didn't use that engine. But Battlefield Bad Company 2, maybe that's what used it. Command and Conquer that was canceled apparently used it. These could be different versions of the game, so it's difficult to look at these kinds of lists. Plants vs. Zombies, Garden Warfare. But seemingly none of the Dead Space universe, nor Mirror's Edge 1, seem to actually use the Frostbite engine. Okay, so unfortunately on this list, I'm not getting any information because I haven't played any of these games. Dragon Age Inquisition, I think I might have that. Mass Effect Andromeda, we know that ran terribly. Need for Speed, I haven't played any of those games. Plants vs. Zombies. If anything, I would lean towards believing, since Battlefront 1, 2 don't seem to really have any problems, I would lean to say maybe it's a difficult to use engine and difficult to implement engine. But it doesn't seem to be a terrible engine. I am slightly disappointed, and I'll probably talk about it when we show the teaser trailer screenshots, which are basically just images from the very beginning of the first Dead Space game. I'm slightly disappointed in the fact that it's not an Unreal Engine game, which I think would have been probably better. Like, you're making a first-person shooting game. It makes a lot of sense to have used the Unreal instead of EA's exclusive Frostbite engine. But I'm also more disappointed in the fact that it's just a remake of the first game. I mean, sure, you can reboot the series, you can put a different twist on it. You're frankly, spoilers for the first game if you're concerned about that. You'd be frankly an idiot to simply have the same reveal that the girlfriend was dead the whole time at the end of this reboot. You need to have a different twist, a different surprise. You need to go in different directions. If anything, I think you get away from the idea and the reveal that it was the military that was actually the bad guys in the first game, and the unitologists were only partial bad guys. I think you probably barely mentioned the military and the unitologists at all, and you start to throw in a more active alien faction much earlier in the story if you're going to do that, or something completely different. I'm somewhat shocked to realize this, and I now recall it actually being talked about, but Dead Space 3 has sections in the co-op where one player sees something completely different from what the other player is, and that's a cool idea. That is a great idea that never is going to work. Just specifically because that means they put a ton of work into that co-op sections, and even without being reminded of that and hearing people talk about that, now that people are talking about Dead Space again and actually saying that they wouldn't mind co-op in Dead Space, which is an idiotic thing to say. Make a different game series if you want co-op where players potentially see different things, and it makes it seem like one player is crazy or acting crazy. But Dead Space as a series established itself first and foremost as a solo horror survival game, and co-op just will not synchronize with that. It just won't work. But yeah, so for my experience, when I finally get around back to playing Dead Space 3 and finishing the game up, I now know that all the effort was not put into the single player experience that I'm having 7 years down the road. All the effort was put into a co-op experience, which probably heavily focuses on the secondary character. But even not knowing that, it did feel like there was a case to make that the co-op player was getting to go on different paths and play a different experience. And unless I can possibly do a new game plus where I play as the other character, which that would be kind of cool, but I'm also not really sure I want to play a new game plus where I'm playing as not Isaac. I'll investigate that certainly, but yeah, that would kind of suck in a lot of different ways to say, hey, you've had this mediocre experience that wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be, but it definitely wasn't great, of Dead Space 3, and you have this Awaken DLC you still have to play, but why not just play the whole game a second time? A new game plus with fully upgraded weapons would probably speed up the process fairly quickly, while giving you new content if you're playing as the other character, but that's about the only thing I could think that would save the annoying realization now that half of the game, or probably way more than half of the game, is just not accessible to a single player. And that's constantly my lament when playing multiplayer focused games, and it's why I have dismissed from the follow list and decided not to purchase or play so many multiplayer focused games, is that there's just nothing there there's no good treatment for a single player. And instead of me just talking about it, here's Video Games Chronicles article. Dead Space Remake confirmed for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. I think it's kind of funny, some people are complaining it's being announced for PlayStation 5 and Series X and S, as if they were wanting people to start talking about a next generation. Like, that seems highly early to be talking about next generation consoles, particularly knowing there's a chip shortage out there. But you can see here you have Isaac and his suit being shown. I think the graphics have all been redone completely, and they do look better, although this is a terrible screenshot to show as their pick. It is the same suits and user interface from the looks of it, same weapons, same necromorphs. These characters here that crawl around and convert corpses into necromorphs have been completely forgotten in Dead Space 3, which arguably, now that I know one character is seeing something completely different, there is a possibility that there's literally been no necromorphs in Dead Space 3 at all, and you've been fighting humans instead, or just shooting randomly in the air. Like,
Come in every shade imaginable.
that is kind of the problem that you had, even not knowing that reveal, because you have this possibility where Isaac has been crazy from the very beginning of the whole series, and nothing you've seen is real. They're suffering definitely from some dark screenshot syndrome, as it were. Just click yes on the trailer and
You were done for.
skip through the blackness.
Spare the innocent.
So it is still dark inside the Ishimura hallways. You're seeing dirty, blood-covered grating. You have an elevator, you have blinking lights, you have like improved things. In a funny way, I don't know if there's like a creature there. I don't know if ray tracing even is something that you would specifically need or benefit from so much in Dead Space. That would be an interesting point, certainly, if you did have a ray tracing game with a lot of darkness, if that suddenly makes lighting that's coming off of your gun way better. The logo is actually cleaner than what you would expect from Dead Space. That's slightly interesting.
By your will, O Lord.
But yeah, that's all the teaser trailer has to show, so not a lot of news. Not really a lot to take from it. There are a lot of caveats, certainly, as to what you would like to see, or what I would personally like to see in the Dead Space, that I'm not sure other people want to see. So I'm not sure if there's a great way to get everybody on board, because there probably are some people that would love to see you just fight with the main gun, and I'm in that crowd. There's some people who would like to see you fight with the 4 original guns, I imagine, and I can see that too. Like the original 4 or 5 guns that were in the game were cool. I think the extra suits and the DLC and then the special DLC guns were unnecessary extras, and I definitely think Dead Space 3's system of custom creating guns is ridiculous, particularly since you can only carry 2 guns in that game. I think having universal bullets for all weapons in Dead Space 3 is a stupid idea. So I kind of would want to see bullet scarcity return, or more bullet scarcity return.
The ordained hour has arrived.
Some of the puzzle mechanics certainly could be left on the cutting room floor for a Dead Space remake. Like having to solve a puzzle to open a door. I think you could probably get rid of a lot of that.
This is where I truly shine.
The path ends here.
There's definitely a lot. Most of the stuff that was added new to Dead Space 3 can be removed right back out, I would say. I think if they have co-op in Dead Space 3, that's gonna look in a weird direction, certainly, like they are just repeating the mistakes of the past. In a lot of ways, I think a Dead Space remake only gets on my wish list after people have actually reviewed it on Steam. Like, I think I want to see other guinea pigs play that game before I'd be willing to give it a chance.
And I answer.
Oh yeah, I smell trouble.
I definitely would want to see new necromorphs, new concepts. I definitely would want to see more story, like, in bigger levels. Like, if the Dead Space remake is just really a shot-for-shot remake of the game, and room-for-room remake of the game, that would be fairly disappointing. Putting it on the Frostbite engine is not enough of a sales point. I've heard claims that the Resident Evil 2 remake inspired them. If that's the way they're going, that's probably better, because we know that the Resident Evil 2 game was not specifically trying to do the exact same sections and the exact same gameplay as the original Resident Evil 2. And we may very well see that the Dead Space remake is just the next game in a growing list of games that are getting remade in newer engines, because they're so old they just don't stand up to modern time. Which I imagine a lot of people at EA, a lot of management at EA, had really hoped that games they would have made would have still been sellable 7 years later or 10 years later. Like, there are definitely a lot of like Scum VM point-and-click adventure games that weren't going for more hyper-realistic graphics that still are very sellable and playable, whereas a lot of these 3D 90s 2000 era games have run out of that being a real viable option, because they just don't run, or they look terrible. Moving on, man, we're gonna take forever at this rate. Battlefield 2042's open beta will launch in September. I don't know how many people are going to be interested in Battlefield, but whatever. I think we've already talked about this, but Gametsu says Limnus Gate has been delayed to September 28th. Still don't think I have seen anything really about that. King of Fighters 15 King of Dinosaurs trailers has some trailers and screenshots. So more King of Fighters games announcements. Have we seen anything as far as King of Fighters announcements, or is this the first one? I guess we should watch this video just to see. I don't feel like I have seen a King of Fighters video. So this looks like it's a guy with a dinosaur mask or in suit. So, yeah, not a real dinosaur. And yeah, this looks like a fighting game, but I don't think I have seen any King of Fighters games.
Smell looks so sweet, you'll get cavities.
Quartzes come in every shade imaginable.
Oh man, if I just waited one more turn.
The ordained hour has arrived.
Oh my gosh, so wow. Did I predict wrong?
Let's see. Gametsu says Furaiki 4 DLC has been announced, which explores the prefecture surrounding Gifu. So, like a Yamaha plant and some other things. This is, I believe, that sightseeing game, so even the DLC looks pretty boring. A game called The Big Con launches August 31st for PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. Oh yeah, I think I recall this. Big Contest, Big Con. It looks interesting, but it certainly could be a game that's very hyped, and the visuals on it doesn't look that good, and the gameplay itself may not really be that good. Like, you definitely have a risk. I'm looking just for one quick disconnect on the Runecraft, and then I'll stop playing it. Because I am definitely not winning with Runecraft. It definitely is a big risk to focus on people talking to screen versus showing actual gameplay when you're advertising a game. Chernobyl Light for PS4 and Xbox One launches September 7th.
World called.
This already is on PC, so
Mother, father.
we could check out the Steam listings. This is, I suspect, a RPG survival action horror game, which was on my follow list, but we can see with that massive positively rating that I should put on the wish list. It's full English and Russian, bundled with Agony Unrated. These are the best Polish games, and Beast, the Beast Inside. Problem is it's early access, so as soon as this comes out of early access, then I'd be willing to reevaluate it. Let's see. Genshin Impact is adding Aloy from Horizon series, although they are drawing her more in a anime-esque cartoony appearance, and they've gone through the effort here to keep her fairly covered up. When you see this like half shirt, you would expect that this would just be cleavage, but nope. And when you see the skirt, you would expect this to be showing leg at least, if not behind. What's ironic, I would say here, is we haven't heard any new complaints about the trailers for the next Horizon game, but the face on that character did not look good in those trailers, and definitely didn't look like a clean, no mud on it, barely even any freckles face. So it is a sharp disconnect as far as the potential two Aloys from two different artists' perspectives, or three Aloys when you consider the way Aloy looked in the first game. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they took that criticism / feedback to heart, and we do see a much better looking Aloy in the next teaser. According to Gamatsu, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout Ratchet and Clank collaboration begins July 26th. If you're playing Fall Guys, that's a player versus player game, so I'm not playing it. A game called Hindsight 2020 Wrath of Rakshasa launches September 9th. I did spend a lot of time yesterday watching Netflix movies, and both of them that I watched, like, one was called Operation Cosmic Sin, which was awful. It had Bruce Willis in it, and it really just highlighted Bruce Willis is far too old to be an action character. The shot compositions, I think, were the main problem there. There either was no writing or there was poor directing, because you just have scenes and basically nothing would happen in the scenes at all. It feels like maybe this was 2 or 3 other movies that they ran out of budget and got merged together, chopped together. And then there's a movie I watched called American Ultra, which I think in a lot of ways was probably just the wrong actor for the role.
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
And I don't feel like it went anywhere with its story because of that. Like it felt like American Ultra felt like it wanted to be this high action kind of spy film, and it just really didn't have the right actor to feel like an action hero, and it didn't have enough action shots to make it feel like an action shot. Anyways, talking about video games, let's, I guess, see if there's a video of trailer of this game, Hindsight. So you accidentally cause an apocalypse, and so you're gonna turn back time and undo it. But the actual gameplay seems to be kind of a third-person hack and slash game with kind of low polygon graphics, a little low polygon graphics. I don't find that particularly impressive. This one's a bit of shocking here from Gametsu. We have, for basically everything, Doctor Who: The Edge of Reality launching September 30th. And so the real question here is, we have a picture here of a TARDIS console, which this I don't think is one I recognize. Developer Maze Theory, never heard of that one. Okay. From the look of it, it seems like it's going to be the new Doctor and the best Doctor in most people's opinion. Whereas I feel like what you probably want to do is establish something along the lines of, we are only going to have video games that tell stories about previous Doctors. Here it seems like, yeah, here you have new Doctor, best Doctor. Let's see if I can come back here and pause the video. I'll just pause, and there. Yeah. You've got some Daleks. Man, it does not want to stay paused. You've got some Sleeping Angels. You've got some Cybertronians. You've got the blue box. You've got some room here. You've got some planet here. Yeah. Nothing against the new female Doctor, who by all thoughts is probably not going to stay as the new Doctor for very long. I just don't think that the current Doctor should be in video games. I think you give voice acting roles to previous Doctors. And there's probably plenty of previous Doctors, even before the reboot of the series, who might be able to show up and do a voice acting gig. It's sort of a way to get extra retirement income. I'd also have to point out, and I don't think there's any way to not point this out, that there's weirdness on trying to make a video game and have a Doctor Who story when half of the Doctor Who TV episodes suck, and there aren't enough of them anyways. There really doesn't feel like there is a lot that is added to most Doctor Who games that I've seen so far. Efforts to make original stories probably should be just rewritten and repolished to make Doctor Who episodes. I would much prefer Doctor Who as a series to have 26 episodes every year come out, and even if that means only 13 of them are even slightly good, and no video games at all, and no like radio dramas or anything else like that. Let's see.
Calculations set. Ready to summon. Calculations set. Ready to summon. This is how you cast.
That one.
Full frontal attack.
Darn it. Next, we have a game from Gamatsu. Black Book launches August 10th. It's a fusion of card-based RPGs and adventure games. Interesting. I don't think I've heard anything about this game. Starting to get some real new news and new announcements. Skip over a little bit. So it's a soft cell kind of CGI appearance, a little low polygon. In the same way. Well, I may not dismiss it completely. Seems like you're casting spells, but it seems like this could be an incredibly slow process of casting spells. But the actual gameplay is card-based, so that may not really matter. It may just... you may have a combination of two gameplay styles here that don't really make a lot of sense, because you may very well be playing card-based games and then being stopped from playing the card-based gameplay that you might like to instead play be told stories and cutscenes versus which is a concern certainly, and you may like the story and you may not like the card-based games. That being said, we have a demo here of it on Steam, and it's rated very positively, which means we can put this game that's not out yet on the follow list. Check that out. 1 damage to an enemy follower. Before we do that,
This is how you cast.
hit that one.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
2 damage now.
Lightning storm.
And evolve that.
Blessed is the promised day.
My crystal sword will bring
Darn
a new
it.
tomorrow.
Not moving fast enough. Let's see. Kimetsu has Death's Gambit Afterlife features trailer, which
I'll discipline you down to your
I
soul.
assume Afterlife is
Ends here.
a expansion DLC for Death's Gambit. Looks like a Castlevania / Metroidvania game. Doesn't look terrible by any means. See if we can find out where Death's Gambit lands as far as popularity on Steam. Yeah, here we have Death's Gambit, mostly positive. It's already on my wish list. It is somewhat teetering here at 75%. Steam database says 73%.
The world called, and I
But yeah,
answered.
I don't think that's too much to be scared away from. 75% is still fairly well. Gematsu has Tales of Arise Rinwell trailer, which says another character, which is just going to be a whole bunch of character teaser trailers for these JRPG games. One thing I think to take from like Tales of Arise as a trailer and all of the modern JRPG games that have been talked about recently is that they are shockingly not the JRPGs of 10 or 15 years ago. They are different things. Whereas there was, I think, a good 12 years plus in which you were just getting .hack games as JRPGs. Or Final Fantasy games, which we still get Final Fantasy games to this point. I think we already talked about Grid Legends being announced, so we can skip over that. This was the trailer that had a lot of people just talking straight to the screen. Yeah. This game was the first game I think they talked about during the EA Play event, and it is just like constantly talked about. They talked about this 3 times, and there's nothing bad about Lost in Random. It looks a little weird. It kind of feels like it might even be an attempt to make something sort of like a Alice, American McGee's Alice, without actually including Alice in Wonderland or American McGee, although it does seem like it is going to be more focused around a more action RPG element in a weirder universe. But yeah, it does not look particularly different from a lot of the scenes in the Alice and American McGee Alice games. So it's like a card-based game at times where you can freeze time, but also it seems like it is action and you're fighting. So that's going to be a hard merger. I don't think you're going to fail at it, but it's going to be a hard merger of 2 very distinct type of gameplay mechanics. And there is a concern certainly that they would be hyping up the game a lot right now because they know it's not that good, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Now, do I have a specific reason why EA would want to make something like American McGee's Alice, or that looks something like it but didn't have the platforming elements, or didn't seem to focus so much on the platforming elements?
What you make of it?
I wouldn't be surprised if they just don't want to do business with American McGee. And I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't come down straight to the fact that he lives in China and they want to do business with people they can see face to face. I also wouldn't be surprised if there's more to the story than that.
I don't need a gun, not when I have my words.
Okay. I'll go ahead and put Lost in Random on the fall list. The other thing certainly could be that this is just another game that they're publishing, because they're not the real developers here. EA isn't, and EA is seemingly going through this direction of publishing games like It Takes Two and Knockout City, which are smaller and give them a little bit of chance to experiment without putting all their eggs in one basket, making a AAA game. Like Sea of Solitude here now is very positive with 526 reviews, but it was a hard journey to get to that. And this is from June 4th, 2020. Whereas in comparison, Unravel 2 has 1,100 reviews. So very few people cared about this game. A Way Out, a co-op only game, is 11,000 reviews. It Takes Two is 33,000. So there's definitely some winners and losers in those setups.
Lightning storm.
The ordained hour has arrived.
My boats are too fast. I'll fry you.
Yeah, I would argue EA kind of just has a problem in general in that there's EA Sports stuff that may or may not be slowing down, where they seem to make their vast majority of their money. And then there's nothing else that really even shifts their focus. Or it has been at least that case so recently with a few EA originals. The idea of them going back and doing Dead Space certainly shows that they're now trying something different, because logically, even with a less than stellar reception of Dead Space 3, they should have tried a couple years later to do a Mass Effect Andromeda style experience with Dead Space, instead of waiting nearly 7 years after Dead Space 3 to do something. They should have at least tried to port the Wii version of Dead Space to PC. That would have not taken a lot of money.
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
Right, let's see.
Blessed is the promised day.
I always catch the varmint. Eventually.
C2.
Rapid fire! Rapid fire!
Let's go ahead and
Just
attack that.
away!
A thankless job.
Rapid fire!
Verifying access.
Gematsu has the Famitsu sales updated, which puts Skyward Sword HD in first place and the Shin-Chan game in second place, despite the fact that the Crayon Shin-Chan game was not really even reviewed well. I guess that just says a lot to its popularity. Ring Fit Adventure is in fifth place, and that's been holding steady for a very long time, whereas Earth Defense Force is 2, barely made it to 10th place, and then this extremely long titled, I believe it's a Anime Girl JRPG dungeon crawler game, made it to the 15th place, which Splunker HD Deluxe is way down at 28th place. Hardware wise, we're still seeing Switch and Switch Lites selling the most, but PlayStation 5 has managed to get a lot higher. So like, it very well may be just a case that the shortage of PlayStation 5s was really affecting sales in Japan. But then we see also the Series X is fairly high, beating out PlayStation 5 Digital Edition. This is an incredibly high number of sales for the Xbox Series X, and I wonder if this isn't a case of the Olympics, that the Olympian athletes and reporters and people like that all went to Japan and decided they needed to buy an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5 while they were there, and that severely increased the number of sales. The Olympics are happening right now. Let's see. Game of Sutra says Umurangi Generation leads the way at the 23rd Annual Independent Games Festival Awards. I believe the IGF Awards are
The world called, and I answered.
are run by the same main company as Game of Sutra. So this is a self-serving announcement of the awards they gave away. A lot of these games I don't recognize at all. Yeah, I'm not sure I recognize any of those. They have an article here, how Naughty Dog defines melee attacks and behaviors in The Last of Us Part 2. You really have to ask the question though, why on July 21st were they talking about The Last of Us Part 2? Because at a certain point that's just not news relevant. It's not newsworthy at this point to be talking about Last of Us Part 2. They also have the California suing Activision Blizzard. Let's see, we already talked about this. Hades won the Game of the Year awards at the Game Developers Choice Awards, which this is GDCA, so 2 different awards. Two different award events seemingly taking place at the same time. I think probably from the same parent company. Again, this list of games though is at least recognizable. Hades, Phasmophobia, Genshin Impact Dreams, Last of Us Part 2, Microsoft Flight Simulator. I can argue this award is more newsworthy since it was just given out. Half-Life Alyx, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades. Pioneer Award goes to Tom Fulp, don't know who that is, and then Lifetime Achievement Award to Laralyn McWilliams, don't know who that is, which that probably means more ignorance on my part than anything. I don't recognize this character either. Shadowverse has so many leader character skins. Game of Sutra has an article here. EA partners with the LPGA to better represent women golfers in EA Sports PGA Tour, which, good. On the face of it, you assume that's good. They have an article here, 8 tools for creating chilling horror games. Horror from the maker of Faith, which Faith does not look like a game worth talking about at all. It might be a well-written game, but it looks hideous visually. Legends of Learning is hiring a senior systems designer in Baltimore, Maryland. Can be 100% remote in the US time zone. That is a thing we're going to probably start to see more of, is the idea of you can be remote, but you need to be awake in our time zone. Versus being remote and being in a Japanese time zone or something like that. Or India's time zone. Let's see.
Rapid fire!
Eyes close as the curtain falls.
Justice finds a way!
Let's see. Game of Sutra has an article here. Assassin's Creed art director Ralph Lacoste leaves Ubisoft for Haven Studios. So, is that a big deal for Assassin's Creed? Probably not.
Son of a gun, ain't ya?
Like, he worked on Revelations, Black Flag, Origins, and Valhalla. So, I mean, he worked on some big Assassin's Creed games, certainly, but I think the art direction, particularly in such a long-running series, has been established enough that that really wouldn't be a concern.
Corpses come in every shade imaginable.
But yeah, it certainly could be more indication of the thought I certainly am having that Ubisoft is losing talent, and the Ubisoft of old, or the Ubisoft of now, is going to fairly quickly become just a shell company where a lot of the Ubisoft employees will have moved over to different companies, or one specific different company, or mostly one specific different company.
Corpses come in every shade imaginable.
Let's see. I don't even know why this is video game news, but the Chappie and District 9 director near Blomkamp has joined Gunzilla as a chief visionary officer. I think we had already heard this news, and this is just getting reported as new. This is Gunzilla is a former group of Far Cry, Crysis, and Assassin's Creed developers, which, again, Ubisoft employees, some of those, or former Ubisoft employees. I think we probably need to squash the idea, though, that a movie director, because a movie director may be good at making movies, he would be good at making video games. I think we need to squash the idea that movie directors in general are actually even good at making movies, because there's just so much, what's the right word to use? Corruption?
Corpses come in every shade imaginable.
Backroom deals? No, that's not the phrase I want to use either. Special treatment. We'll call it special treatment. There's so much special treatment given to people, to the people that are allowed to make movies, and it is who you know, basically, as a career, and not a career based on skill, really. That I don't immediately go, oh, this guy made a movie, Chappie, and made District 9, both movies that, while critical darlings, didn't even really succeed that well. That doesn't make me feel like he'd be good as a chief visionary officer, which is just really a made-up title. Yeah, even if you had like Steven Spielberg, I mean, we have this whole example, I suppose, where Steven Spielberg was involved in the creation of a few games, and they really weren't great games. They were alright games, but they didn't make a argument that Steven Spielberg should in any way quit his day job and become a video game creator, that there was even some possibility that that was a chance of there was a chance of that happening. Alright, let's go ahead and do this, I suppose.
I'll keep going. No, don't give up.
This is how you cast.
This guy could attack him. Probably should.
This is how you cast.
How did I miss that?
Keep running out of water. I had 3 different tall glasses of water, and I'm on to the 3rd one now.
Awaken, for the end is near.
Moving on, Game Sutra has an article. The Microsoft Game Development Kit is now available for free on GitHub. Microsoft owns GitHub now. Does that help you a lot? Maybe. The thing I would say more than this is the fact that the common tools, libraries, and documentation are now on GitHub starts the process of someone potentially trying to make good documentation. I'm going to assume this is not particularly great documentation as to how to use this. I don't know if this is going to start you off down a path of using C++ or C or C# as a language. I wouldn't be surprised if it's .NET code still, even, although maybe not. Okay.
At last I will be anointed.
Open your ears. Justice himself is speaking.
A fitting end.
You might die from this.
Damage heavy.
Let's see. The GDK is available as a binary release rather than open source, although Microsoft says it's working to make the Xbox game development more open, which, yeah, that really doesn't mean much at that point. It's just a place to download. You can download this file off GitHub, which most people are not going to be familiar with downloading things off of GitHub, which is kind of cryptic. Frankly, it's more cryptic than it should be. And at that point, you're just going to have to start trying to figure out how to use it. See if we can actually look at this blog. See if it says anything.
The world called, and I answered.
I hope you're ready to escort me.
Says you can. This entails delivering tools that developers can use to build games for mobile platforms on mobile engines, including tools to create games programs to help distribute games, services to monetize and commercialize games, and the power to retain, grow, and scale games. GDKX is an add-on SDK to the GDK that exposes Xbox console-specific API extensions. While many of these extensions are common to both Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S, some console generation specific. They do not support Xbox 360 development. Yep. And then the third question is, why is it not open source? Yep. It's not really saying a lot there. So yeah, let's just, for a moment here, look at the GitHub. So when you get to a GitHub page like this, it's just a mess of text. And if you wanted to download something, you could click it here, but more than likely what you would want to do is click here on the code and download the zip. Or you would want to dig down into an installer file like this, but you probably, in this case, would need all of this installer stuff, so you then want to have to download the whole folder, which you can't really do, so you have to go back up and just download the zip. And that's a hassle. Yeah. Apparently there are some licensing required
Lamentable fate.
for tools, software licensing, and permissions to configure, certify, and sell games in the Microsoft Marketplace requires a license. But apparently if you just use GDK itself and not GDKX, you probably could develop a game using this. Although at a certain point there is a question as to why you would use the Xbox game development kit if you weren't looking at some point to putting it on an Xbox platform. Yeah, this really doesn't make sense as a as far as just making programs or making games for multiple different platforms. I think if you were to try to make a game using GDK, you might have a lot of trouble getting that to play on the PlayStation or Nintendo Switch, whereas Unity or Unreal is probably your better bet by far. And then Microsoft has other things that certainly compete, like the Microsoft Universal Windows platform, which you'd potentially consider, why not just build a Windows app that way. Finally got somebody to just quick disconnect. Thank goodness. Now I just want to play in general something, try and get some victories. Meanwhile, Gamma Sutra has much more important news, in my opinion. Unity has acquired SpeedTree creator interactive data visualization, which SpeedTree has been used in a lot of games. Certainly it gets talked about, probably more than it deserves to be talked about, but it is a big help to just randomly or procedurally generate forests, and that's why we see a lot of forests in games in general.
This one's for my family.
There is a bit of a cold war, in my opinion, happening between Unity and Unreal, where last stream, I believe it was, we talked about Unreal acquiring a company. Now Unity is acquiring a company. It's just going to be acquisition after acquisition after acquisition to try and make these two duopolistic companies, which, whether they want to be duopolies or not, that's what they're becoming, fighting it out. Whereas whatever third engine you use, between like Frostbite engine or RPG Maker or something like that, is not going to compare at all to Unity and Unreal. Like I would imagine the number 3 engine really would be Crysis engine. Crytek. Moving on, the 3D haptics maker Mirascenes is now a member of the PlayStation 5's Tools and Middleware program, which I don't even know what that is, but it does imply to me that they're going to try and create some kind of special controller for the PlayStation 5, or more accurately, they're going to try and create a middleware software for the for some device or some new class of devices for the PlayStation 5. Alright, we've got some games we need to go through until we can see the beginning and the end, and then maybe we just call it at that point. Maybe we'll do some follow list cleanup. Here we have a game on Steam called Rise of Mavros, which neon colored characters hacking and slashing each other. Doesn't look terrible. It's early access, it's single player, it's English, it's $8.99. I could see myself leaning towards just ignoring this, but I don't really see a good reason to do that. I think this deserves to be on the follow list. Let's see. I want to really play today and really try and win when I can. Here we have a game on Steam called Midnight Legends, which seems to be some flying car racing game. It's just got too many cars on the screen. And I think that's probably the problem you'd always have with the idea of multiple vertical lanes in a racing game. $9.99, English and Russian. Yeah, it's just visually not polished to my liking, so I'm going to say no to that one. Just go and hit this. And do I want to draw 2 cards? I don't think I do. I'm just gonna end the turn there. Next we have a game on Steam called Red Frozen, which just looks like it's a Russian game of no real interest. It's a Russian themed game. Kind of feels asset flippy. It embodies all the stereotypes about Russia and even a little more. $3.99 English and Russian. Yeah, I don't see anything there that's applaudable, so no to that. Here we have a game called Box and Ball, which we can say no to immediately. $3.74 English only, just a physics game. Right. We want this on the field.
There is not a soul without sin.
And then evolve that
You are done for.
for more health.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
And then go ahead and do that
You're in good hands.
for a buff up. Next we have a game on Steam called Trouble in Johnny's Room, which looks like a MS Paint level graphics Zelda clone. It's free, so I guess the price is right. English only. Skip that. Here we have a game called Arcadius, which seems to be a collection of old arcade games on a small screen. Which, yeah, I don't see any reason why you would want to play the game that way. It seems ridiculous. See, I don't even know what these are supposed to represent here. Trophies or something? Free to play, English, French.
Manage this.
So it got some DLC? No. It's weird to just have it be free to play, but whatever. Is it my turn? Nope. Still waiting for the other person to play. Here we have a game called The Best BJ, which I assume is supposed to imply it doesn't stand for blackjack. It doesn't look terrible, considering that there isn't a lot of competition as far as blackjack on Steam, whereas there's a ton of competition as far as blackjack on mobile phones. But there's nothing special here, certainly. $3.59 English only. Okay. You can, I suppose, just play that. And then that gets rid of that. And then we'll just attack here. Attack here. And attack here. And we'll save our 2 evolves. I should probably mention that the adult Nutaku game College Days is having another event, which it probably feels like it's been 6 months to a year since the last time it had an event at all. But this is like the one time when they have these events that it wants you to be in the game interface clicking on things non-stop for like 2 or 3 weeks straight. And it doesn't make any sense because there's just like nothing to do in the game. So there's no reason that you would do anything other than just log in, do the dailies in less than 20 minutes, and then log out. And having the player spend more time in the actual game interface doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't really encourage like the player to spend more money. Destiny Child is doing something interesting in which it's slowly trickling out a side story narrative, and it's kind of a weird way to trickle out the story, and it feels like the story might actually integrate into the main story. So that doesn't really work as a way of delivery. Meanwhile, the same old that's happening there is still the same old gameplay. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. They changed the loading screen. Destiny Child has a different new character and a different outfit every week or so on the load screen, and for a while it was the new character Tiwaz, basically topless, and now they've moved it to Tiwaz in a different outfit that's not as revealing. But yeah, that's to be expected. They weren't going to stick with that one outfit. If anything, I would argue there's a very delicate balance as far as the lewdness of the outfits in Destiny Child. If it goes too far, it is going to feel sleazy, like the Nutaku College Day game is, where there's just straight up sex scenes and nudity. It's going to feel a little sleazy. It's going to feel a little more awkward to try and play a game like that on a cell phone where somebody might look over your shoulder. And honestly, the outfits and the fashion can certainly tease a lot more and make it more interesting by not revealing everything. Whereas, like, it's kind of the difference between going to a topless bar and a bottomless bar. Like, most guys will put up with the sleaziness of a topless bar. You're getting into really sleazy territory if you're going to a bottomless full nude bar at that point. Very fewer people. I don't want to say just guys. Some girls go to strip clubs too, for one reason or another. Okay. What turn is this? Turn 10. I do 5 damage. This saves me for a turn. Suppose this might save me for a turn, or at least give me something to do. We have a game on Steam here called Timothy vs. the Aliens, which looks interesting. It's from this company called Wild Sphere. I've never heard of it. Seems to be open world game where you shoot aliens. The aliens look somewhat polished. $16.99, English, Spain, Spanish. Now, I'm going to put this on the follow list, but there is a chance certainly that this really isn't enough of a game. Like, looking at even this map, that could be a fairly small area if there aren't levels and buildings you go into. Seems to me we have this developer made a game called Flying Soldiers in September 22nd of 22, and he made a game called Not in July 30th, 2020. September 22nd, 2020. So, yeah, just a couple games were made before this. Let's see what Not got 3 reviews. Not a lot. So, this might be the type of thing that if Timmy vs. the Aliens got reviewed by me, it would give me maybe an excuse to try and bring something that really has no relevancy into coverage. Neither one of these games do look very relevant or worth playing. Timmy vs. the Aliens looks better, certainly. Yeah, we have a game on Steam, Dead End Detective, The Sixpence Strangler, which looks like a visual novel with some pencil sketches. They're saying it's a noir game. $1.49. I can't immediately just hate this art style because this looks like something that might actually work. It kind of feels like a Junji Ito style art style, that Japanese horror animator or manga writer. I hope I pronounced his name somewhat close. So I'm gonna put that on the fall list. Here we have a game called Songs of Farka, which, oops, seems to be a detective puzzle game that's already on my following list. It's mostly positive with 35 reviews, and so maybe it just came out of early access and is now full game. $17.99, English and Russian. I want to get it a couple more reviews though. 35 is still a little low, so I'll leave it on the follow list. I may just want to end this stream early instead of pushing it to like 3 hours. Here we have a game on Steam called Welcome to Pine Hills, which seems to be a horror game. It's probably an asset flip horror game, but it looks like it has enough polish to not immediately dismiss it as that. These screenshots are not helping it much though. This trailer's not helping it much. All we're seeing is a lot of darkness and fogginess and road. Early access, $4.24, English and Russian. I'll put it on the follow list, I suppose. See, should we play anything? No. Here we have a game on Steam called Command Line Pilot, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with like a computer command line. Seems more like a military command line. Or maybe you do use a computer command line, but I'm not really seeing it in any of the screenshots. Yeah. I think maybe they're just using the word command line for a programming game. $1.99, English, allegedly full audio. I guess we'll leave it on the follow list. I'm not super enthusiastic with what I see right now, though. Here we have a game called RPG Squad Battle, which just looks like an asset flip MOBA type game. $2.99, single player only though, English full audio. I would have sworn that this was more of a Chinese MOBA type game from the looks of it. Regardless, it doesn't look good. Here we have a game called Loop Room, which looks to be a Dark Screenshot Syndrome horror game. Kind of looks a little pixely for what I can see, and I can barely see anything. Yeah, that is just Dark Screenshot Syndrome to the max. $5.99, several languages. I have to say just no to that. Like, they didn't even show this horror character in any of the screenshots or the trailer. Here we have a game that's all in Asian characters, which looks like it's probably a cell phone game that's been ported. Kind of a dungeon crawler type experience, role-playing game. 99 cents, Chinese only. Let's see, what can we play right now? What do we want to play right now? Okay. Let me turn. Let's see. Here we have a game called Idol Yaki from Delinquent to Pop Stars, and there was an anime that they turned the game into this, where they had anime girls and in jail outfits, and it was much more lewd than what this looks like. That went nowhere though. That they, what was that called? Criminal Girls, I think. Yeah, they made 2 games of that and then it got forgotten. This looks like a visual novel that's just not animated particularly well. Free to play, English full audio. The idea of a delinquent being willing to follow any instructions whatsoever, let alone the massive amounts of instructions that would be required to be a pop star, and the massive amount of control put over pop stars is kind of laughable. Although there was that Netflix series where the whole joke was it was 3 Yakuza gangsters who failed their boss, and so to pay him back, they had sex change operations and became pop star idols, which that was the whole joke of it, and it was animated, so it made some sense there. That show also popular for the season it was out and then forgotten, as is most anime. It's like either you're remembered forever like Neon Genesis Evangelion, or you're forgotten after a season in anime. I do want to see at some point if I could find enough time to watch the Sailor Moon reboot. Like between watching the new reboot TV series on Hulu and the special movies that on Netflix, at least that's how you have to do it in the United States, that would be a lot of time commitment, certainly. Next we have a game on Steam, The Origin Blind Maid, which it looks more like it is an actual polished horror game. There's actual creatures, there's actual spookiness. Still, a lot of this could just be asset flipped, but that's a lot of it does feel like it's more custom art. It's $13.49, single player, English full audio. I assume this is a survival horror first person shooter game. For a brief second there I thought maybe it was some kind of like detective board game or mystery or point and click game. If anything, this feels like this could be a real experience, something like Condemned Criminal Origin. It's from Badland Publishing. What else have they published? Anima Gate of Memories, Magic Twins, AWE. Not a lot of games on my wish list, but not terrible looking games either. Although it seems like they kind of started fairly rough with a lot of their games being mixed. But then they mostly fixed that. So they're getting better. We should always applaud improvement. At a certain point, it might be a little unfair to applaud improvement, though, because if you've been consistently good your entire career, people are going to take that for granted. But yeah, even consistently good people should try and improve to be even better. Like, standards certainly have gone up over the generations of video games. And you can't just make something like Donkey Kong for the arcade and have success nowadays. We're seeing a little bit more horror games today. Here we have one called Creeping Darkness, which, yeah, I don't think it cuts the mustard. Just another asset flip. $5 even, no discount, English and Russian. Allegedly full audio English. Yep. Let's see. We have Fresh Body, which I believe this might already have been on my follow list. I guess not. this is a weird looking animated thumbnail, and the top of it looks like it's just a top-down twin stick hack and slash game. So is there some kind of body horror element to this? It's a lot of trailers, certainly. And here, so is she integrate parts of bosses she defeats in a roguelike experience? It's tagged as an action roguelike. I would guess that's probably the case. So it is just constantly beating people and then mutating yourself and changing yourself in a unique, weird art style. It might very well be that this is similar to Binding of Isaac. What's funny here is they say it's similar to Rebirth, but not the original game, not Repentance. Which, if you're going to say a game is similar to Binding of Isaac, it's probably going to be similar to all of Binding of Isaac, because all the DLCs and different versions of Binding of Isaac are fairly similar. You can also get the original soundtrack. It's English and Chinese for $9.99. This must be a case of a game. I recall seeing this. This must be a case of a game that was either teetering on mostly positive at 76% positive, or a game that is just come out of early access. It's been as low as $3.39 first on January of 2021. So it must have either been early access and now it's out of early access, or it got rejected from my fall list previously because it wasn't positively reviewed. But right now it is positively reviewed, so it meets all the requirements to be on the wish list. So I'll put it on the wish list. Let's play this. And play this. And play this, I guess.
Faster, holier.
So now that can evolve,
Back straight,
which
forward.
I shouldn't have done any of that turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Kula, which looks like it's just a infinite platforming game of no quality. Free to play, Norwegian only. That's a first one. Can I? No, unfortunately you can't just click a language and see every game that's in that language. That would be fairly useless when clicking on English, because let's face it, 99% of all games support English language, or say they do at least. But it would be very interesting to see games that support Norwegian.
And that concludes today's sermon.
Of course, if I went to Steam.no, which I assume is Norwegian domain, maybe you would get Norwegian-centric games more that way. In the same way that if I went to steam.co.uk, I probably would get more UK-centric games. Although in that case, they still would be in English, so probably wouldn't be that different. Next we have a game on Steam here called Fairy Tale, which looks like it's 4-player platforming. I'm not sure if it's player versus player. Yeah, it doesn't feel like there's an actual game here though. So it has some kind of interesting looking characters, but not even that great looking characters. And it might be a little asset flippy. $16.99 online PvP. Well, the fact that it's on online PvP only eliminates it from my consideration. But I think there's a little 1 or 2 caveats here that set off some red flags. Here we have a game called Rat Prison, which doesn't look like anything of interest. $5.99. They're saying it's like Dead Space 2 or Dead Space 3, English and Russian.
The bewitching hour is upon us.
Next we have Urban Trial Tricky Deluxe Edition, which I don't know if that's supposed to be a name confusion for SSX Tricky or one of the other BMX like trick motorcycle trick games. It definitely feels like it's trying to do some name confusion there. $15.99, English full audio. Yeah, because you have this other game, Urban Trial Playground, which is mixed review. Is this from the same developer? Yeah, it is. Some of these games did make it to my wish list. Steel Rats made it to that. Trials Fusion, on the other hand, I think is a totally different game. Yeah, so there's some name confusion issues there, but I'll put it on the fall list anyways. I'll be exceedingly generous. Okay, do this.
We'll lift some heavy scriptures.
And then do this.
It looks like I'm up.
And then we'll do this.
A Faraday keeps the doctor away.
Harder, faster,
And then
holier.
we'll evolve this and hit that.
You're done for.
Put your legs into each prayer.
Shutting down.
Next game we have is tagged hentai and nudity, so I won't show it, even though it does seem like I could actually show it. Yeah.
What should we play today,
Let
Roly
me just
Poly?
double check here.
Carouse in the cacophony.
Here we have a game on Steam called My Cute Pagan Girl, which is just an adult lewd game, match 3 game with some visual novel elements that also I imagine aren't that good. Nothing here particularly interesting other than the fact that it is being allowed on Steam. $1.39, English and Russian full audio. We are getting into still that weird point where it seems like if you went back the last 6 months and said all the games tagged with nudity that were released were terrible games, and there have just been no good games or even questionable games as far as quality allowed on Steam, you at that point do have to kind of question, is this a false narrative creating concept that they are working on where Steam and Valve are only allowing bad games intentionally and to, I guess, disincentivize people from buying those types of products, which I don't know if that really would ever happen. Yep. You could kind of make the same tinfoil hat accusation certainly on like Facebook. Is Facebook showing you all the awful posts that you see on Facebook intentionally so you hate Facebook? I mean, what would be the reason that, or you hate the people that post those posts? It doesn't really work that way, certainly on Facebook. And Facebook, I guess, more has control to make it so you don't see the post in the first place, whereas seeing games on Steam the way I do it is inevitable. Moving on, we have a game called May Blues, which looks like it's just a kind of different match 3 game. Seems to be probably a Chinese game if I was to guess. $3.19, English and Japanese. Interesting. without being able to read the words in Japanese though, so you don't really know what you're connecting at all, so I don't think that would work very practically for most players. This. And then this.
Shutting down.
And this. Get that.
It looks like I'm up.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Greed Abandoned Dogs, which is tagged as a survival shooter game.
I'm coming.
This
for you.
looks a little asset flippy, but it also looks a little polished, and we may just be hitting a point where an asset flip first person shooter can look fairly good. It's, let's see, early access, free to play with online PvP, which means I pretty much can dismiss it right now. Anyways, showing you this trailer and this cutscene that seems very much out of line with all the other images being shown. Yeah, that trailer definitely didn't make it feel like it was something. It's tagged as time travel, and it definitely feels like you are traveling through different times. That also makes it feel asset flippy. Let's go home and see if we have any daily quest missions left to do. Yeah, 4 ranked missions, theoretically, that we would want to get done. I don't think I'll be spending any extra time trying to get any of that done today. I've got work to do, certainly. I want to finish that dumb irrigation box, irrigation system, spigot weatherproof box project. I'd like to get it done and be done with it. Yeah, we have a game on Steam, Glisten to Your Heart, the Courage Within You, which, yeah, looks kind of like nothing of interest. $5.99. Close that. Yeah, we have a game called Replacer, in some Asian words. Characters. Yeah, I don't think there's a game here I really would want to play. It's like that VR teleport yourself to a new place concept and a laser concept mixed together, and frustration precision platforming all mixed together. Early access, free, English and Japanese. I guess it's free, so check it out if you're interested. Here we have Practical Shooting Simulator, which this actually looks more interesting if you could actually do the practical shooting, but I'm not sure you do. Let's see, I think what you do is you make the environment and then you can't do anything after that point. Yeah, you're totally scripting this, which, okay, fair enough. That might be useful if you were running a shooting competition where you could script something like this, but there is not really a game here, I think. So, early access, $29.99, English and Russian. Yeah, there might be a product here, but it's going to be definitely a specialized product to make a video to show what they expect people to do. And I imagine if you were going to a competition like this, you probably barely have a laptop, let alone a good place where you could present what is going to happen. Practical shooting competitions not particularly popular, as far as I know, on TV, unless they're on some special channel I don't watch. So simulating things that way is weird. It's such a unique software though. I'm going to put it on the fall list just to keep an eye on it. Next we have a game on Steam called Disturbing Forest Demon's Path, which, okay, looks a little low polygonal, but it doesn't look terrible. Not sure if there's a reason why I'd want to play this adventure game. On the other hand, this might be like Zelda. It could be like a Zelda game, and if you just can overlook the graphics, you might have a great experience. It's free to play, but it's a demo for Disturbing Forest. So I think we probably should just wait until Disturbing Forest comes out. Here we have a game called Pego, which just looks like a peg simulating pachinko type game. $1.19, English only. Let's come over here and play a little bit.
Hostile life form detected.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Gigapocalypse, which looks like more of a 2D rampaging kaiju game, but doesn't feel like it is just destroying an entire environment. It seems like you're going from left to right and you've got some assistant characters and you're just smashing things. This might be a better gameplay mechanic than what the original Rampage had. Early access, $8.99, several languages. Yeah, I think we could put this on the follow list. Seems like we're gonna have a small collection of Rampage clones showing up on Steam.
Oh, guinea pigs, where are you?
Terminating hostile life form.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Smoot's Summer Games. I don't know what a smoot is. Maybe it's what these characters are supposed to be. These little big-headed characters. Yeah, it's funny though. I don't think too many people are gonna fall for low-effort Olympics hype games. $5.94, bunch of languages. Yeah, I just don't think I'd want to play an Olympic game anyways. Like, when I really think about it. Just gotta put them on the field.
100% string and 0% fluff.
You would have to do something really imaginative to make me interested in an Olympics style game. Here we have a game called Interregnum Chronicles Signal, which is tagged as a walking simulator. Seems to be set in space. Doesn't inherently mean it's bad, but it definitely increases the odds that it's bad. $11.99, English full audio. Guess we put this on the follow list. This is one of those games that really is going to revolve around its reviews. Is that game Last Stop from Annapurna Interactive? Not enough reviews yet, and it's already on the following list. So, still waiting to see how people respond to this game. It did definitely get some coverage, but that coverage also seemed to get squashed by other coverage. So, it is probably one of these more smaller games that would have succeeded better if they had worked to get out of the way of bigger games.
Little canary.
All of you.
Begin.
To die or not. What goes around comes around.
Next we have a game on Steam called Deepest Chamber, which looks like it's a card battler game which honestly, at a certain point, I'm going to have so many card battle games on my follow list that I need to just start getting rid of card games. This is early access, 1169, English and Chinese. It's mostly positive with 23 reviews, but that's not enough. Here we have a game called My Brother Lives in a Canyon. Looks like it's a low polygon walking simulator game with the Godot engine apparently. $3.99, English only. Here we have a game called Yuki, which is tagged VR. Upbeat mix of a bullet hell and roguelike game. There's a lot going on here. I want to see the actual gameplay. Alright, so third person perspective, flying around. It kind of feels like a Star Fox game with bullet hell in it would be the best way to describe it. There is another game, the Rez game, that you could compare it to, certainly. This is $19.99. But requires VR, single player, English, full audio. Let's see. Can you play it outside of VR? Apparently not. I'm gonna put it on the follow list just because it looks like it might be a good VR game, but like every VR game on the follow list, they're just never going to get off the following list. Because I almost certainly am never going to buy a VR headset.
Nothing shall alter the... Do not sully this great work.
I will protect even in death.
Darn it, there's another one. Oh. I screwed up there. That probably wouldn't have mattered any. Here we have a game called Natural Instincts, which apparently is a publisher sale going on. I'm not going to click on these publisher sales going forward. Let's see. Natural Instincts seems like it's a, I guess, animal simulator. Doesn't look like it's a hunting game per se, or a thing where you actually play as a specific animal. I guess Animal Refuge Simulator might be the closest thing you would describe it as. Early access, $8.99, English and Polish. Is there really a game I want to play here? Kind of feels almost like a real-time strategy game. You know what? I'll just put it on the follow list and see if it comes out of early access ever. Not getting anywhere very fast, clearly, with these ranked games. Next we have a game called Reality's Reverse Side, which is a visual novel. The animation seems a little all over the place, but not terrible. It's not really showing you a lot, though. At least without watching the trailer. $3.39 is a little cheap. English and Russian. Let's just let the video skip through here. See if there's anything of interest. Doesn't seem like it. No, it definitely seems like it's just a visual novel, so even the videos, videos of the gameplay is boring. And here we have another game, tagged sexual content and nudity, which definitely makes it seem like this was the Friday that they were going to bundle all the adult games together so it doesn't get any coverage. So yeah, we have Shades of Sakura here from Bonsai Project, which I don't believe is the maker of other Sakura games. It says it's a puzzle game. I don't even really understand what the puzzles would be. Seems to be maybe some physics game being using a Japanese ancient art style. $1.69. Full audio allegedly in Chinese, Russian, and English. Yep. Suppose I've never really mentioned just how incredibly popular hentai and anime girl nudity and adult content is in Russia. It's probably hugely popular in China too, but we never get to any numbers to prove that. Shades of Sakura does come with a 18+ DLC for free. That's interesting too, because if I was going to cover a game like this, it would be always nice to have the censored version. This is the first game from this developer, which that's nice to know also. That all being said, is there really a game here I want to play? I'm seeing a lot of animation. It looks like it's using kind of the live 3D gameplay mechanics, but yeah, it is just a physics game. It's you draw things on the screen to knock yin yang spheres from point A to point B so that they'll touch each other. Okay. Now, in this video, there's a lot of sequences where it is it's clear that they've just drawn clothes over what was a nude scene before. Yeah, unfortunately, Shades of Sakura just doesn't look like it's actually a good game. Here we have a game on Steam called Asterism, which is tagged as a visual novel and LGBTQ+. The animation looks bad. Why is it always the LGBTQ+ animation that looks so bad? I mean, like, almost, I would say, yeah, 76% of the time when you see this bad kind of animation, it is coming from something that is also trying to sell itself uniquely by being SJW, I would assume. This game is English only, $8.99, where you don't kind of have that. If it is just a lesbian story or a gay story, a male-on-male gay story, you wouldn't particularly want to tag your game LGBTQ+ and have the whole alphabet soup as the tag. You would want to focus on the specific novelesque story you're telling. Yeah, more and more when I hear somebody use like a long list of descriptors, that an overly long list of descriptors, that causes my ears to turn off in disinterest. Let's see, well, do I have a reason to really attack right now? Save myself one health. Moving on, we have a game called You Can't Finish, which is just a low-effort platforming game, maybe a troll game. $1.19, English and Russian.
What goes around comes around.
Still haven't seen the beginning of the end here. Yeah, we have a game called Edge of Galaxy, which looks to be a space flying around game. Actually doesn't look so much as just you fly around and attack things randomly. It looks like it has more RPG elements, something that FTL might have worked better with. If in every encounter in FTL you did fly around and shoot each other, and then you collected resources and upgraded, and occasionally you asked questions and made decisions, that might have been a more enjoyable experience. There's nothing wrong with FTL, certainly, but it did take a lot of time to get to the good parts of that game. A lot of times you couldn't make it to the good parts of the game, and it was just redundant gameplay. This is $8.99 English and Russian. I'm gonna give it a follow. And I particularly don't even like space games, so that's kind of saying a lot. Here we have a game called Tournament Arc, which looks like it's some kind of deck building game, but the animation looks MS Paint level in quality. Free, early access, English only. It's not something that's going to interest me. Here we have a game called Faded Gray, which is probably an asset flip horror game. Yep, not showing any creatures, not really showing any gameplay, not really showing anything of interest. Free, I guess, English only, from itch.io. We've seen a small collection of games that were originally from itch.io all of a sudden coming over to Steam, even though they're still free. I'm not sure if that's going to be a trend or not. I can certainly understand if you think your game is good enough to be on Steam and you want to put it on Steam for free, paying that $100 to list it is not asking that much. But also, you just got to make sure your game really is worth it in comparison to everything else on Steam. Or if otherwise it's just going to get ignored and dismissed. Okay. Let's see, what can we do? 2 damage to everybody, I think that works fairly well. And then put that on the field. See, next we have a game on Steam called Where the Snow Settles, which it's a little low polygonal.
What goes around comes around.
I don't know if there's really enough of a game here. $10.99 English only. I'll be generous and put it on the follow list.
Shutting down.
Yeah, we have one called Hail Hitler. I don't think I could put this on YouTube, really. I'm a little surprised this is even allowed on Steam. Some kind of visual novel. Seems like you can change the events of Hitler as his psychologist. Hitler's life. $4.49. It takes place in 1925. English full audio. C. Well, here's a problem here. He's not a Nazi apologist. He is Czech, and Hitler murdered tens of thousands of his ancestors. This game is an experiment. It's totally possible to be Czech and also a Nazi apologist, or a troll, or a liar, and not actually be Czech. So there's certainly danger all around a game like that. Like, just the name alone, there is danger.
This is not a warning. Commencing termination protocol. Destroying target.
Job.
Shutting down.
Completing termination sequence.
Yeah, I just don't think I could put this game. I'm trying to see. Oh, it doesn't even say hail. It says heal Hitler. I misread it even. Yeah, I just don't think I could ever justify covering that. I just think it would potentially get my YouTube channel taken down. And at a certain point that may be a statement against the cancel culture attitude of YouTube and the internet in general, but at a certain point it also is just reality, and one has to live within the bounds of reality, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Visitor's First Contact, which looks like it's probably an asset flip alien first-person shooter. Seems like you also fly around in a spaceship, so you're doing two gameplay mechanics, probably. I would suspect with neither one of them running well. It's early access, $12.74, and I'm definitely not seeing anything. You're shooting a dragon for some unknown reason in a space shooter game. Let's see. Next we have a game called Beyond the Gates, which looks like it's a horror dungeon game of something. Let's see. 2 to 4 player online co-op horror with mainly focuses on the storyline. That doesn't make a lot of sense, certainly. To have a co-op horror game in general doesn't really make sense. That. I guess in the turn. Beyond the Gates is early access for $3.99. English, allegedly full audio, and German, which is not a combination we see a lot of. Here we have a game called BYOOL, Best Years of Our Lives, which is way too zoomed in, marker drawing visual novels. It's not terrible marker drawings by any means, but it is way too zoomed in. $3.99, English only. Yeah. I think that's a pass easily. Here we have a game called Wind, which seems to be some kind of crazy VR game from the looks of it. Puzzle adventure game. There was another game like that where you had to lead people from point A to point B by changing the environment around a twisted environment. That game kind of came and went and people forgot about it. It requires VR. It's $19.99, English and a bunch of languages. Yeah, I feel like this is really a case where they have added difficulty to the game specifically by making it VR instead of thinking about what can you do with VR to make the game better. Okay. What can we do here to save the day?
Thy little canary.
This. This.
To die or not to die.
There you go. That probably isn't going to win for me, but we'll try.
Foul forces of darkness, bow before my tempest.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Sorceress, which looks like it's just an RPG Maker game. We haven't had, I think, maybe 2 RPG Maker looking games today. $9.99. I kind of like this art. It's just unfortunately that it doesn't consistently stick to the rest of the game. Here we have something Asian letters called The Termination, tagged as a visual novel. Looks to me like it's probably a Chinese visual novel. $8.79, Chinese only. Yeah, we have a dungeon crawler called Yoshimitsu Hatsumi, which by the looks of it probably isn't that much of a game. Seeing a lot of generic things, and then you have a bikini clad lady beating up just very generic ninja characters. It's $2.39, English only, and that's too cheap. really, for the type of game that you would expect this to really be. Yeah, there's literally only like one enemy type, it looks like. Here we have a game called Match 3 Mania, which is just a Match 3 game. $7.79. Guy took his time and forgot to play too. Do this.
Hostile unit confirmed.
Do this.
Hostile life form detected.
Let's see. Do this.
And lies.
Do this.
Everything was a lie.
Do this.
And lies.
And then this.
Everything was a lie.
And evolve. And kill that.
Accept harmony.
This is not a warning. Commencing termination protocol.
Darn it. Could have killed
The truth
something
will cut
else.
you down.
Terminating hostile life form. Destroying target.
Blow on, dear wind.
Completing termination sequence.
Here we have a game called Mystery Solitaire Grim Tales 3. That was a lot of gameplay I just did on Shadowverse. This is just a solitaire game. $2.99, bunch of languages. Nothing of interest. Here we have Survival Escape Room, which just looks like a low effort horror asset flip game for $1.49. Here we have a game called Pop It Please, which looks like a mobile game that's been ported to Steam for 59 cents, English and Russian. Wow, we had a lot of games here. Here we have a game called Frail Face, which, it looks weird enough that it might deserve a follow. Yeah, it's a weird, kind of bad art style, top-down twin stick shooter experience. It's early access for $4.40, English and Russian. I just kind of think that the visuals here are a little too rough, and the gameplay here seems to be a little too generic. Randomized top-down game with unique game mechanics. I don't think that's enough of a sales point.
Power of mortality.
There, I lost. I have several articles that have been spread amongst the Steam listings. So let's go through these articles and hope that gets us to the beginning of the end and leaves some games left over. I wanted to point this out. Gamma Sutra had an article here, how Naughty Dog prototyped the interactive guitar in Last of Us Part 2. This article, either a day after the previous Last of Us Part 2 article or the exact same day. And at a certain point, you're just doing propaganda, trying to hype up and have people talk about The Last of Us Part 2. There's literally no reason why you'd be talking about it right now. Even if you did an interview, you would just do one article and not two. The interactive guitar mechanic, from what I hear, is actually very interesting in Last of Us Part 2. That being said, it's also kind of pointless that anybody spent any time creating that when there was better things in the story writing and the development of Last of Us Part 2 that could have happened instead. You could only really say that Last of Us Part 2, if it was a perfect game, then having that extra would be appreciated. But since it wasn't anywhere close to a perfect game, in a lot of people's opinion, I feel like effort could have been put elsewhere. Gamma Sutra has an article here. This is probably to be expected, but a little surprising that it happened today. Multiple Borderlands 3 developers have departed Gearbox for indier pastures. Remember, Gearbox was sold basically by Randy Pitchford to the Embracer Group company, and Randy Pitchford, from what it seems like, has been screwing and kind of lying to employees at Gearbox for a few years now, if not longer. So maybe there was some internal indication that Randy Pitchford was still going to stay at Gearbox, where they had hopes that he would actually leave, and a new Gearbox might emerge from that, from him leaving. But also it may have nothing to do with that. Maybe they had already planned to depart. So they're starting anew as indie developers. Axios reports that each served a senior role in Borderlands 3, and many have been with Gearbox for several years prior to the fresh departure. These departures include 3 developers who have been at the studio for over a decade. So Christopher Brock, Keith Schuler, and Scott Kester, as well as Paul Sage, Chris Strez, and Kevin Penrod. In a statement to Axios, founder Randy Pitchford adds that the departure was on the best of terms and will cause minimal disruption to our current plans. I wouldn't be surprised if Randy Pitchford in some weird way pushed them all out, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they were already kind of pushed out just by Randy Pitchford's nonsense. All were involved in a yet unannounced project in early stages of development at Gearbox, and reportedly some of the members of the team are excited for what has now become an opportunity for new blood to take charge of that project and make a mark at the studio. Reportedly, I wonder who reported that. Each developer also worked on Gearbox's latest release, Borderlands 3, which, in all fairness, I think pretty much anybody that worked at Gearbox worked on Borderlands 3. And maybe they got a payout. It could very well be a case that they just got a big payout because they were more upper management when they got acquired by Embracer Group. They may very well have had some kind of stock options type deal on Gearbox. Video Games Chronicle says the Dead Space creator says he's excited to see what Motive does with the remake. Glenn Schofield says directing the original was one of his career highlights. What I'd be interested in seeing, though, would be the question. He's also interested in the Callisto protocol. Oh yeah, you have to remember that there is basically a Dead Space game called the Callisto Protocol that is also in development. It may very well out Dead Space. Yeah, a lot of the people who worked on Dead Space are working on the Callisto Protocol. So that is information to remember. Yeah, I've yet to see any creature like this in Dead Space 3. What I really would like to know, though, is if I look up what Glenn Schofield or Schofield is working on right now, can I Google search that and find that out? American video game artist, designer, director, and producer. He's currently the CEO of Striking Distance Studios. He formerly was the vice president and general manager of Visceral Games. Alright, so if we click games here, he started in 1991 on Barbie Girl game. Interesting. Penn and Teller, Smoke and Mirrors. A lot of kids games, certainly. And then from Eidos Interactive, he moved over to EA and made Dead Space, Godfather Part 2, Dead Space Extraction. And yeah, he is the director of the Callisto Protocol. So that's what he's working on. So it's very possible that EA is literally just trying to steal the thunder of the Callisto Protocol, which was announced earlier than that, than the Dead Space remake. And they may very well just be rushing to remake an old game just to spite an old employee or a group of old employees. YouTube announced a new super thanks thing you can do in the chat too. I should just mention that. I don't know if you can. It says I can use custom emojis and create a poll, but doesn't look like as somebody running the chat I could do any kind of super thanks or anything like that. Which it's just like taking one of the Twitch ideas, certainly. Oh, I'm almost out of hard drive space. Good thing I looked at that. I have about an hour and 24 minutes left of hard drive space. Wonder what happened there. That I should have had more than that. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. American McGee wants to make another Alice game. Game designer is ready to start work on his planned third entry, Alice Asylum. I don't feel like there's really any new news here other than since it was EA that owns at least Alice Madness Returns. I think they also own the original Alice game too. Maybe he's just once again tweeting out. He's already said all of this anyways. Let's see. Is this Alice Asylum, or if this is this one of just art things? There's a lot of American McGee Alice concept videos out there that he's put out. This kind of looks like the original Alice game more than anything. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't do anything. And in all fairness, doing even that kind of post publicly might be the thing that irritates EA more than anything, and that's why it hasn't happened yet. It's because they want the private talks, and he's doing everything in the open, in the public, embarrassing EA because they won't do business with him. Which maybe he knows that, and maybe that's his intention. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. Tokyo Olympics opens with video game music. Sonic, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and others accompanied the Parade of Nations. Which I don't know who really picks the music. If anything, it's an interesting argument as far as copyright. Copyright of music in Japan, and maybe the Olympics get some special free use or free license for music in Japan that other people wouldn't get. There was a Nier Initiator was played, which is a fairly more out there song. You know, what's not getting mentioned here though is any like traditional ancient Japanese music or anything like that, which also probably is played every now and then, and just other kinds of songs I imagine are also played. But I guess, in all fairness, for video game news, that's not video game news. Let's see, we have a Gamma Sutra article. Sports Interactive is bringing women's football to Football Manager, which I guess if you want to play football, I assume they mean soccer. But maybe they mean American football? I guess read the article if you're interested. I'm not that interested. Gametsu says Yonder the Cloud Catching Chronicles Enhanced Edition launches July 27th for PS5 and August 5th for Xbox Series. Let's see. This game is on Steam, so we might be better off looking at the reviews for Yonder on Steam. It's rated very positively. $24.99 single player. I wonder why it's not on my followers. Open world, relaxing adventure game. Well, I don't see anything here that eliminates it from being on my wish list. It's single player. It's in English. It's maybe way overpriced at $25, but it's been down to $9.99. It's rated very positively. Maybe I just missed it. The game The Plane Effect launches August 12th. It's a dystopian adventure game. See if we can skip through this trailer and see if we can figure out what kind of game it is. Not really. Looks like it's weird, to say the least. I guess that's as much as I can describe it. A game called Astria Ascending J-Stir mini game trailer has been released. Which I don't know if J-Stir is a mini game inside of Astria Ascending. I guess it is. It's like a hexagonal built card game. According to a YouTuber I followed, trying to make a card game based off of anything other than player card sized cards is incredibly more expensive, because then you have to have manufacturers make non-standard size cards, and they're gonna charge you for that. Certainly. Whereas it kind of makes sense that you might want to change things up and have a different style, size, or shape of a card. It also then makes just getting sleeves and packaging things way more difficult, obviously. According to Gamatsu, Sniper Elite 4 Enhanced is now available for PS5 and Xbox Series. Let's see, we've got a couple more tabs. According to Video Games Chronicles, Respawn is making new single-player adventure set in a unique universe. The studio is staffing up for this project, and it's in its early stages. Which, okay, I suppose. They previously were behind Star Wars Fallen Order and Apex Legend and Titanfall, so it kind of feels like they are also going to abandon Titanfall even more. This was the other thing that the EA Play announcement was talking about, was the new character for Apex Legends. They put like 3 trailers out showing off that one guy. According to Gamasutra, there is a report that Blizzard's misfiring World of Warcraft 3 remake, I mean, not World of Warcraft, just Warcraft 3 remake, was the result of cost cutting and mismanagement. Which, yeah, that's believable, with all the Activision Blizzard accusations in general. Like, all that totally would make sense. And then finally, Gametsu says Gotcha Gotcha Games interview with producer Yusuke Morino. If you want to read this interview. Let's see. And so that's all the news that we have to talk about. And so then we just now need to run through my Twitter feed and make sure that there wasn't any amazing new bit of news that came out in the last 3 hours. Psychonauts 2 is now available for pre-order on the PlayStation Store. I don't know if there's any reason why you would need to pre-order it. Probably have some free code Fridays from Major Nelson. He does that stuff. You know, there's probably been enough events at this point, besides Dungeons and Dragons Live, that could have been sponsored, at least in part, by G4, the new G4, or whatever that really is. That it kind of is starting to feel like they maybe have dropped the ball on becoming an authority to run events, or an authority to host events, or at least be involved in events. And yeah, I'm still not really sure what G4 is going to be. Apparently the Epic Games Store 42 minutes ago was having trouble stopping people from completing purchases. Yep, so I imagine that's going to be an issue for some people. It's another chink in the armor, certainly, of the Epic Games Store, just not succeeding well in the middle of their summer sale or right before their summer sale. I feel like there was a Dead Space anime. Yes, there was. So what you would want to see is where that is streaming, or will that become streaming. Allegedly, from what I hear, Netflix has lost a lot of subscribers lately. Maybe the pandemic finally caught up on them. Maybe something else caught up on them. Maybe just Disney Plus wrecked them. But I wonder if this isn't a good point where a lot of those old direct-to-DVD style video game show, movies, anime things could go to Netflix or some other service. In a lot of ways, it probably should just be something that everybody gets free for owning, like Dead Space 1. Anyways, it's just a free piece of DLC, because I doubt, but then the licensing rights around all of that is probably insane. It's probably easier for Netflix to acquire the ability to stream that, and more people would see it on Netflix than it would be to have it be Steam DLC. And I don't know if that really matters anyways, to see that Dead Space anime at this point, if they're going to reboot everything and probably change the story, or hopefully change the story. That would be my hope. Certainly I don't want to see the same thing. Okay, Warner Brothers is saying the return ships are a chance to get back to work, which maybe that indicates that a lot of people left Warner Brothers, and they're hoping to entice people to come back to it. Not sure if they're offering a particularly good offering, though, when these are all temporary jobs. There is a level of stability that a permanent or contract job might make it more enticing. But at a certain point, we kind of need to take the next step that should have been taken a long time ago, and start having pensions that pay out a lot earlier, and jobs that aren't basically trying to kill their employees before they reach retirement age and are able to actually cash out on that pension. Like, at a certain point, instead of working from the age of 16 to 65 in the United States, we very possibly are going to need to, and should, I think morally, start to have people retiring at 60, 50, 55. maybe even 40, maybe even 30. Maybe you work for 5 years, and that's enough if everything is so automated and we really don't need that many workers. Like, all of society up until this point has just needed massive amounts of manual labor, and we kind of don't need that anymore, and that is very disruptive, certainly. Oh, speaking of disruptive and manual labor, the FTC, I believe, has voted unanimously to enforce the right to repair concept, which is great, assuming they actually enforce it. And that will allow people to fix their John Deere tractors and phones and computers. Now, at a certain point, there's different ways in which that could be implemented, and Apple could still very easily be the only source for a lot of parts, so it could be very hard to repair an Apple phone, or as hard as it is now, if you're an unauthorized repairman. The next step to the idea of enforcing right to repair is to enforce mandatory unrevocable warranties at a certain point, because what's the point of being able to fix your phone if they can reduce or remove your warranty for every single other part of your phone, including software if you fix the hardware? Well, regardless, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist.